Well, folks, thank you so much for coming to my presentation. I really appreciate that. Traditionally, it's a smaller presentation because it's a very specialized topic, and so I don't mind at all. But I'm Sebastian. I work for Google Play Protect, which is Google's, actually it's technically the malware scanning part of Google Play Protect. We figured out that at one point we can reuse the same scanner that we had for malware to also look for security vulnerabilities, and that's why I'm here. Essentially we expanded what we're doing to care from malicious activity on Google Play, also Google Play, to also accidentally privacy violating, accidentally security problematic stuff, and to find new leads for security bugs. We set up this bug bounty program, which is called Google Play Security Rewards Program. I'm going to talk about it at the end of this presentation. I'm technically co-presenting with Adam, who is currently, actually he just had a kid, and so he's not co-presenting with me, but Adam is the person in charge of this program from the program management side of you. All right, let's see what we got today. It's a really funny setup with the microphone because I have to look over it. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit about VDPs and BBPs, and those are great abbreviations for what's called a vulnerability disclosure program and a bug bounty program. And I'm going to define this in the next couple of slides. I'm going to point out the difference and so on. Why would you like to create one of those? Are you ready to start? The short answer is yes, but the long answer is going to come later. And then how do we actually set up one of those disclosure programs? And then a couple of slides about Google Play Security Reward Program. So what is a vulnerability disclosure program or a bug bounty program? Let's take a look. A vulnerability disclosure program is it's a very simple program that every company that is interested in security, that takes security seriously, takes privacy seriously, they want to set it up. And in the very simplest form, it is just a way for external reports to get to your company in a way that is well-structured, well-defined, easy to discover, and so on. In a more complicated way, it's essentially a way where you advertise or how you advertise. Security researchers, or just people who accidentally found some kind of security or privacy problem in your app or your website or whatever you want to protect. This is essentially how you reach us, what you can expect from us, what we expect from you, what is we actually consider important, meaning what is the scope of the program. And very many companies also provide what's called a safe harbor clause. A safe harbor clause essentially means if you're, as a security researcher, acting in good faith, then we're not going to sue you or take any other legal action against you. That's very important because there's always a lot of problems with less experienced companies and how they react to security findings in their applications. We picked up a couple of very nice vulnerability disclosure program websites that we wanted to have as examples on the slides. You can take a look at them later, right? So we got General Motors, Instacart, Cloudflare, Khan Academy. Those are all pages that are really nicely structured. And so if you want to set up your own vulnerability disclosure program, or you would like to compare your setup to that of these example companies, just give it a shot and open these VDP websites and take a look at how they do it. A bug bounty program is a little bit different, but not substantially so, from a vulnerability disclosure program. The bug bounty program essentially rewards security researchers for their findings. And that's the key difference. A vulnerability disclosure program is about bringing structure into talking to external people about security. And the bug bounty program is, in addition to providing the structure, it also is about how do we actually reward security researchers. And why would we like to do that in the first place? And we're going to talk about it, right? Usually the way it works is that for most bug bounty programs, there is a financial payout, meaning you get so and so much, many dollars Starts very low. I've seen bug bounty programs that are like $50, $100, and they go all the way up to hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars if you take the Apple, for example, Apple's bug bounty program that they just announced like a couple of weeks ago. The good news is you decide the payout, right? And so because you decide the payout as an organization, you can drive the incentives for security researchers about what they're supposed to report to you and what you just don't care about. And that's very interesting because one of the key goals of a bug bounty program is actually to try to get researchers to go in a certain direction. And payouts is obviously how you want to incentivize researchers to go in a certain direction. If you don't have the budget, or if someone reports issues that are very low severity, very low impact, then you may also want to go to non-monetary rewards, right? So you can give out swag, t-shirts, hats, whatever you want. And I think a couple of security researchers at least really like the idea of like, oh, t-shirts with I'm a super hacker for website.x.com or whatever. Anything that kind of shows off how good they are. Obviously, money is always better, but no, I acknowledge that not everybody actually has money. A very interesting alternative reward bounty is coming, for example, from United Airlines. United Airlines hands out miles, and there's at least one person who got a reward of 1 million flight miles. And if you know how much you can fly with 1 million flight miles, that's like, I think, about 10 transatlantic business class flights or so. So that's a very nice reward. Yeah, so maybe if you have something like United Miles to hand out in your corporation, it will also be nice as a non-monetary reward. So let's take a look at what the VDP process looks like, and it looks a little bit complicated. So I'm going to go through it. The good news is I will explain it to you. The bad news is this is the ideal example of how it goes, because usually vulnerability disclosure is a fairly messy game, and it's a fairly messy game because not everybody, you expect like the ideal security researcher to work with you, but in reality it's like all kinds of random people who work with you, and then it's just getting them to understand what's going on and establishing a reasonable channel of communication is actually fairly difficult, and you're not always dealing with reasonable people. So in an ideal case, the way it works is that in blue you have the security researcher and what the security researcher is doing. In green you got what your organization is going to do. So obviously a security researcher discovers a vulnerability in your app, on your website, anywhere else, in whatever you publish. And because you have a greatly advertised vulnerability disclosure program, the security researcher has a very easy time to discover what they have to do, be it either by Googling for your company name, security, looking at other places where these programs are usually advertised, and so on. And then, very easy, the security researcher just reports the vulnerability to your organization. It comes in. Usually the way it is, a dedicated security contact person does an initial triage of the incoming ticket. They decide, is it in scope, is it valid? Meaning, is it actually a legitimate issue? Very often, very, very often, especially if you pay out more, you're going to get a lot of issues that are not valid in the first place, meaning they're not actually security issues, but because external people hope for a big payout, they are going to start arguing with you, no, this is really a security issue, and so on. That's very unfortunate. We're going to talk a little bit about how to mitigate that later on. But let's assume it's a valid issue. So you reply to the researcher and tell them, oh yeah, this is actually a very interesting issue. Give us some more time to dig into it. And then you start remediation. And remediation in the very easiest way is that you work in your organization to get the issue fixed. And while you're working on that, you give your security researcher regular updates on how the progress is going. If you fix the issue very fast, you probably don't need to give regular updates, but if you say, oh, it's going to take us 9 months to fix that, then you want to occasionally check in with them, right? And once that is fixed, you inform the security researcher, you pay out, for this one you actually don't pay out, but you tell them, oh yeah, we fixed it, thank you so very much for the report, and so on. At every point in this flowchart, things can go very wrong, and I'll talk about this a little bit later. Why would you want to create a vulnerability disclosure program in the first place, or a bug bounty program even better, if you want to incentivize researchers to actually look at your stuff? Let's take an example. There is a company that we made up. It's called Bob's Nuggets. It's an application that helps users buy and sell precious metals from each other. So a peer-to-peer gold selling application, which sounds like a terrible idea in the first place. But it exists in our slide deck at least. And because of the way this application works, there is going to be a lot of very sensitive information stored, like how big your gold stash is and where your home address is. That's already a great combination in my opinion, but also other stuff, right? Name, email address, and so on. So we got Abby. Abby is a security consultant, and because security consultant is always a little bit weird, she's also a precious metal trader, peer-to-peer. That's what we do. And as she's using that application, she randomly comes across a really interesting thing that tips her off that there may be a security issue at play, right? So she creates a test account, tries to access the data on the test account from her legitimate account, and then she sees, oh yeah, I can actually read all the data in a way that's not expected from a test account. And now she's concerned about that because, well, if she can do it, then anybody else can. And if she's randomly coming across that, then the dedicated hacker probably already found it too. So she wants to contact the developers behind Bob's Nuggets. What happens next, right? And so there's a couple of different scenarios depending on how well your company is set up. First scenario, Abby tries to find a way to report the vulnerability, but there's no dedicated security reporting line. And that's very common with very many companies that they don't follow best practices for the industry, meaning they don't respond to security at email address. You should always have a security at whatever your company domain is, email address that you monitor. It's like how security researchers often try to reach you. If you don't have that, set up a website or set up another easily discoverable way that tells you, hey, if you find a security or privacy problem with my application, this is the way to go. Bob's Nuggets does not have that, so Abby is getting desperate. She opens a ticket with the help desk support staff. The help desk support staff doesn't actually know what to do with that. And that happens all the time, and then security researchers tend to post screenshots on Twitter and laugh about how bad that company is set up. Just this morning I saw a company who responded to, oh, it's totally, so some security researcher who have a complaint on Twitter that, oh, they're sending me my plain text password in the email. And the support staff on Twitter said, that's totally secure because it's illegal to read someone else's email. And that's maybe not a situation you want to find yourself in. So Abby is frustrated, gives up, and writes a blog post about the vulnerability. That's also something that security researchers love doing because that's how they advertise their skills, and that's how they hope to get future gigs with companies, either as a dedicated security full-time employee or maybe as a contractor to audit some code, right? And so blog post goes live, a journalist sees it on Twitter. There's a couple of dedicated tech security journalists that work for, let's say, Wired or Ars Technica and so on, and they follow all these security researchers, so something like that will always go detected. And so the tech journalist writes a nice article that gets published and says, oh, Bob's Nugget, totally vulnerable. We know where everybody's gold stash is. And that's not a situation you want to find yourself in. That's literally the worst case situation. Because now you have no control over what's happening next as a company. You have no control about the PR that's coming up. You have no control about your own remediation deadlines. And worst of all, there's now a very high chance that malicious actors who never looked at Bob's Nuggets before actually go seek out and try to find that same vulnerability in Bob's Nuggets. And it's very interesting that even for security reports that are very non-technical, the hackers actually know where they have to look from like minimal technical descriptions in blog posts or articles. And so it's very easy for them to discover the same vulnerability easily. So that's the one you want to avoid at all costs. And it's not about avoiding the PR. It's not even avoiding about getting hacked. It's more about like controlling the whole timeline of what's going to happen. So in a better setup, actually in scenario number 2, Abby tries to find a way to report the vulnerability to Bob's Nuggets. Still no dedicated security reporting line. Help desk staff doesn't know what to do. Abby gives up but doesn't blog about it, right? And that also happens a lot. Like, why, if Abby maybe is a user of that, she doesn't want to expose that company to easily get hacked. So the bug sits around for a while, unknown to Bob's Nuggets, because the developer doesn't know it, never gets fixed. And so an actual criminal finds the same vulnerability, steals the user's data and sells it on the internet somewhere. Bob's Nuggets still ends up in the news, this time as a breach report that this company got hacked. All the user data has been dumped to a random paste bin, and you still scramble to fix the bug and respond to the incident. That's also not a great thing to be. So in a much nicer scenario number 3, Abby actually finds a bug bounty program for Bob's Nuggets, and she reports the vulnerability privately to the developers of Bob's Nuggets. Bob's Nuggets acknowledges the report, thanks Abby, pays her bounty, and fixes the bug before it can be exploited. So Abby is very happy with the exchange because she sees that the company cares about security, the company makes it very easy to get external reports fixed, and she even gets money paid out. So she has an incentive to find other vulnerabilities in the same application, and she has no malicious intent. She's going to start working with the developers of the application in the future again, and that makes the application better for every user. And that's the ideal scenario that we all want to strive for. So, to summarize, why do we want to create a vulnerability disclosure program or a bug bounty program? The most important part is that it provides a structured process for accepting vulnerability reports. The structure is very important. At Google, where I work, we don't always get to follow a structured process for accepting vulnerability reports, because we're a very big company with very many products, and there's very many people out there that look for security and privacy holes. And often they work with us because we have a whole bunch of different bug bounty programs that pay out actually a lot of money across our product line. But sometimes you just can't control it because for some reason the researcher doesn't want to or is not allowed to go through our bug bounty program. So they just dump it on some kind of Medium blog post or whatever. Then we scramble, right? We scramble to first understand what is even going on. Nobody ever talked to us about it. Then we get the inquiry from the tech press, which is like, hey, here's this thing you just heard about for the first time. Can you give us a statement within the next 30 minutes about what's going on? And like in 30 minutes, we don't even understand what's going on. Then you get the usual tech press article that says Google didn't give a statement about this. And that's usually not because we don't want to give a statement. It's because we literally have no idea what's going on if someone's just going to dump it on us. But it looks bad, right? And so we're striving to create a structured process for as many external reports as possible. A structured process includes rules of engagement. Rules of engagement essentially means we as a company tell you as a security researcher the following things are allowed for you to do or not. For example, a very common rule of engagement is if you get access to our customer database, please don't create a dump of the whole thing. It's okay if you take your own data set or a single other person's data set just as a proof of concept, but please don't just dump everything and just download 4 gigabytes of SQL data. That just opens everybody up to liability. Scope is very important because the scope allows you to control what you actually want to hear about from security researchers and what you don't want to hear about, right? For example, for the Google Play Security Rewards program that I'm going to talk about later, the scope is very narrow. We only care about the most severe of security issues. And so, although there are many other security issues that need to be fixed, we don't actually pay out for them. Takes me to my next point, reward structure. Reward structure is very interesting because the reward structure, in addition to the scope, is also how you incentivize security researchers. If you believe you have particularly sensitive data, and that data is maybe your highest resource that you want to protect, your highest at-risk or at-value resource that you want to protect, you may want to pay out a lot of money for potential compromises of that data. On the other hand, maybe you don't have so much data, but you're really concerned about ways to fraudulently buy things off your site, or maybe a particular bug class, say SQL injection. You may want to just pay out more for these to guide security researchers to start looking for those. Contact points, very important, because you also need to know, how do I actually contact the company if I have a security finding? For bug bounty programs, there are many options. You can either host one yourself, you can have it hosted on one of the couple of software as a service, I guess, bug bounty programs like HackerOne or BugCrowd or whatever. I'm going to talk about those a little bit later. So that's the first part. The second part is obviously, okay, in addition to a structured process in where you control all the timelines, you also have a continuous program in place that actually security tests your application or your website, and hopefully external security researchers that don't have malicious intent work with you to find and fix these bugs. That's very nice, right? We all want to use applications that don't expose our data or don't introduce security gaps into whatever we're doing. Here's a big one. I think it highlights gaps in your existing security processes. And by that I mean, if you have a bug bounty program and you get a lot of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities reported to you, you may want to rethink how you build your website, because obviously your developers or the tooling that your developers use are not suitable for preventing cross-site scripting vulnerabilities. And that is, I think, one of the biggest value propositions of a bug bounty program or vulnerability disclosure program. That if you're introspective enough, it actually tells you a lot about your own gaps and weaknesses are as an organization. It's an augmentation to your existing security processes. It's never going to be a replacement to your security processes. There's a lot more around security than a bug bounty program. For example, everything from code reviews to security reviews to using the right tooling to making sure that you have your access control set up properly and so on. All of that predates bug bounty programs in their importance. And so bug bounty is like 1% of a security program, and by no means a replacement for it. And I think that's very important, because there's a lot of companies out there that are like, oh, we got a bug bounty program, so security researchers are just going to tell us what's wrong. We don't have to spend internal resources. And that's a very wrong approach. You have to spend a lot of internal resources. Bug bounty program is only like 1%. Security can be a competitive advantage. In theory, at least, I'm not convinced if that's actually a thing in practice, but imagine that you're a bank, right, and you have a very visible setup as a security-minded bank app or bank website. Then maybe it's going to be an advantage over your competitor bank that gets random data leaks every month or whatever. Definitely there are some companies who have successfully created an image that are very security-minded or privacy-minded, and that's also at least partly rewarded by customers. Are you ready to start a bug bounty program or a vulnerability disclosure program? Let's talk about that for a little bit. How many people in this room actually work for companies that have one of these programs? 1, Alec, I know you do. 2, 3, 4, okay, about half, I would say. That's very good. And in general, everybody's ready, but there are different stages of readiness, I would say. So you got to be careful. Just setting it up and letting it run wild without any kind of pre-release planning or pre-announcement planning is a great way to backfire. If you recall, when I talked about the flowchart earlier, where I said, oh, this is the stuff that a security researcher is doing, this is the stuff that your organization is doing, things can go wrong at every single step. Let's talk a little bit about how things can go wrong inside your organization. So if you've never done that before and you don't have a strong internal security team, then I would recommend you look for an external company that you can work with to host your bug bounty program and give you some guidance on that. For Google Play Security Rewards program, we use a platform that's called HackerOne. I don't want to guide you too much in the direction of HackerOne, because there's also competitors like Bugcrowd, which are also very good. The two big ones seem to be HackerOne and Bugcrowd, but there's also a couple smaller players in the space. I'm just going to mention HackerOne in here because we chose it, and we chose it because they were closest to what we expected from a bug bounty program, and so. But everybody can pick for their own. It doesn't really matter which one you pick. But if you pick one of those, you're going to have a big advantage because it allows you to set up a bug bounty program in private mode. A private mode essentially means you ask your bug bounty provider company, tell them, I want to start a bug bounty program. I'm in this space. I'm looking for these kinds of security issues. So can you invite a couple of known hackers that have worked in that space before we make a wide announcement to the public? And that's a very cool thing, because these hackers who've been working with the respective bug bounty program for years, they know what they're doing, they are experts, they know how to interact with software companies, and they help you refine the processes and scope and definitions of your own bug bounty program. And that's extremely valuable, because you get that feedback before you go public, and that's great, because if you get the feedback after you go public, then you may have to scramble to update your bug bounty program publicly, to update your rules of engagement, your scope, and so on. But if you have a private program for a couple of months, that's very nice, because they can tell you, hey, this is nice, but I don't really like that this is in scope and this is not. Your rules of engagement are unclear. When do I expose myself to legal risk or not? I definitely highly recommend it. You should also start very narrowly on what kind of security issues you accept, or what kind of privacy data breach issues you accept. If you've never set up a bug bounty program before, this helps you guide the amount of incoming tickets, both in quantity and also in quality. You kind of know what you're expecting. When we started the Google-based security rewards program, we only had, I think, 2 different security issues in scope. The first one was remote code execution, which is a very high security class of vulnerabilities. And the second one was, I think, private data leak. Now we are expanded to 3, but we still keep it very narrow. So don't really know what to expect, even after running this for like 2 years. Think about the ways you want to incentivize and reward researchers. Money is the best. If you don't have money, find alternatives that are either cruel or useful, like the United Miles I had mentioned. And then use that time to work your way up to a public program. A public program is essentially an easily discoverable way of running a bug bounty program where security researchers of any kind can participate without being invited. There's also a couple of companies who have exclusively invitation-only bug bounty programs, actually. I'm not sure if I'm in favor of that, but I'm also very sure that these companies know what they're doing. So maybe a permanently private one where you just get the best hackers invited by HackerOne or Bugcrowd or whoever you're working with may also be the right choice for you. A bug bounty program actually creates a lot of work, and that's very surprising, because you think, oh, I don't need to hire security researchers because someone externally is doing it for me. I just need to respond to what's coming in, say, oh yeah, thanks for that, thanks for that. The first thing you will discover is that reviewing incoming tickets is actually surprisingly difficult, because there's many reasons. The first one is very often there's a language barrier, like you get a lot of people that don't necessarily speak your language, and then it's a combination of trying to make sense of what they're saying and Google Translate, or Google Translate on their side. There's a lot of people also who may speak the language very well, but don't use the right terminology, don't really know what they're doing. And then sometimes you can say, okay, this person clearly doesn't know what they're doing, you thank them and you move on, right? But sometimes you get a lot of bugs which are kind of in the middle, where you think, I don't quite understand what that person is doing, but I need to dig into it because it could be legit. And then you also get a lot of people who are very argumentative about why their report makes sense, even if you tell them it doesn't make sense. One thing, So the people who do the initial triage of these tickets, very many years ago, there was this list of top 10 worst jobs in America. And one of those top 10 worst jobs in America was like the person at Microsoft who triages these incoming tickets. And it's very funny, and people keep citing that. And it's a terrible, terrible job. I did it myself. I keep doing it myself. And there's going to be, whoever you hire for this, it's going to be a very high churn and turnover rate, because dealing with all these people is, for some reason, not very interesting or engaging or satisfying in any way. So that's a problem, but you need to have someone who does that. If you go with one of the bug bounty platforms, at least, then they can do some initial triage on their side as one of their paid services. But even if they do initial triage, they don't know everything about your application or your website. So you're still going to have to work with them to actually triage it on your side. Handling researcher communications and potential disagreements. My tip is, if you're a well-funded company, just pay out. It's usually not worth getting into any kind of like disagreements, squabbles, angry blog posts or Twitter rants by security researchers. Well, if you could prevent all of that by saying, hey, we're going to pay you $500, but please never report issues like that in the future because we don't care about them. And we do that a lot, actually. When someone sends us stuff that is, it's not totally bad, but it's also not a case that's really in scope, we just tell them, here's a couple of hundred, never submit that again, we'll never pay out for this again. Very important, obviously, security only gets fixed. Security only improves when bugs get fixed, right? So if you just sit on an endless amount of bugs that are externally reported, then your application is never going to get safe, and you're literally just wasting all that money getting or paying out these bug bounties. It's also an industry standard that reported issues get disclosed after 90 days of not getting fixed. So if you're sitting on those longer than 90 days, you may, the researcher may still go public even if you haven't fixed the issue yet. So that's a thing that you need to risk manage a little bit. Obviously, you need to get buy-in from your internal stakeholders, legal, PR. If they've never done that, or if they've never even heard of that, you're going to probably have a very uphill battle to fight, because they're like, why would we invite hackers to target our application or our website? That sounds like a bad idea, right? Then you need to convince them a little bit with, oh, here's a study that says that, Microsoft has been doing it for 10 years successfully, whatever. Can't help you with that, but everybody obviously has to get the right approval and sign off internally. Adjust your expectations. I think it's a very big one. And before I continue, I do a time check because I got no clock here. Okay. That sounds good. So adjust your expectations. If you're a random application and you set up a bug bounty program and then you're like, oh, now it's going to come in, right? It's going to come, the flooding will happen into our inbox. It's probably not going to happen because nobody cares about your application. That's the sad truth. Even for like Google Play security rewards program, we used to get like 0 to 4 tickets a week, and that was, we had like 50-ish apps in scope. So for 50 apps that are all very popular on Google Play, we got 0 to 4 tickets a week. We opened it up now to 500 apps, and now we get like 20 tickets a week. So that's a lot, but if you're just a random app that has like 1 million downloads, or even 10 million downloads, you have to do something to actually incentivize security researchers to take a look at that, because otherwise they're like, why should I take a look at your stuff and Facebook pays me 10 times what you're paying as part of your bug bounty program, right? So how do you incentivize folks to actually look at your stuff? There's first the issue of people need to know that your bug bounty program exists, so you need to advertise that somehow. I don't know what your individual organization's PR setup is like, but you have to start doing that. And then you also have to incentivize hackers, because if you say, oh, for the highest severity issue, you take all of our customer database, we give you a t-shirt, that's probably, nobody's going to put their time into that. And I know it's hard to say, oh, we're going to offer you $5,000 if you hack our stuff, because you don't really know once you spin up that program if you get a lot of reports to pay out $5,000, and then you get 20 reports in 1 month suddenly for some reason, and then you're like out of $100,000 in a month, and your a director or VP is going to knock on your door and say, hey, why are we losing so much money on this bug bounty program? So you want to make sure that you scale up slowly, but at the same time you still have to come up with ways to get security researchers to actually know about your bug bounty program and care about it. Bug bounties are not fixing your application at scale. The most important thing for us at Google is that whenever we hear about a new type of vulnerability, it gives us the ability to look across all the applications in Google Play or other code bases that we have internally and say, hey, this is a very interesting new class of vulnerability. What can we do to detect that at scale by writing a scanner for that class of vulnerabilities? And so you want to get away from the idea that you just play whack-a-mole with the incoming tickets and say, oh, here's a ticket, we fix it. Here's another ticket, we fix it. Here's another ticket, we fix it. No, you need to use that opportunity that someone highlights that you have a gap in your security setup to fix that gap. And even with a triage partner at HackerOne or Bugcrowd or whoever, you need to have someone internally who can actually understand if something is a security problem or not. If there's not a single person inside your company that can tell you this is a security issue, then you're going to have a really bad time spinning up a bug bounty program and communicating with external security researchers. So how do I start one of these programs? Either with reward or without reward. Yeah, find a bug bounty partner if you don't want to host it yourself. You can host it yourself. It's going to make things very, very difficult unless you're a large, experienced cooperation with a good security team. You can create a free self-guided program on HackerOne, which is really nice, so you don't have to pay up front. You also have to do all the work up front. And then it's possible for you to buy certain services from HackerOne, like triage help or whatever. And essentially you can grow your program to your company's needs by adding additional services on HackerOne. So that's very cool. Ensure you've achieved buy-in. We talked about that before. Make sure you fix your bugs, you reject invalid bugs, and that's also very difficult, right? Because security researchers are going to come to you and they say, hey, no, that's totally a legit bug. Why do you actually reject it? And then you have to come up with a good way to communicate that keeps the security researchers happy, because you want to have the good security researchers stay on, and you want the bad security researchers not to go crazy on Twitter and essentially talk bad about you, your company, your bug bounty program. You also may want to come up very early on with an idea of what to do in case of duplicate reports. That's something that every bug bounty program gets to do, which is like 2 hackers at the same time, or kind of at the same time, report the same security vulnerability to you. How do you deal with that? It's more complicated than you believe at first. Responsiveness to hackers is by far the easiest way to keep talent engaged in your program. And I gotta say, I think that doesn't just go for security research, it goes for everybody that you're communicating with internally or externally at your company. If you just keep them in the loop about what's going on, oh, hey, we've received your ticket, thank you for that. And a very nice thing that very good bug bounty programs are doing is that they actually tell you in your email, whenever they send you an email, they tell you the next time we communicate with you is no later than next Friday. And then you just keep doing that, and that's very nice, because then security researchers never have to wait around and wonder, hey, can I get an update, can I get an update? Because they want an update on the things all the time. And so if you tell them we send you the next update Friday the 15th, then that's very nice for them. And they'll stop bugging you too. So I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on the Google Play Security Rewards program, which is the one that I'm part of. So I'll give you a little bit of a history of what this program is actually about. The program is our attempt to incentivize security research against the top applications on Google Play. This is not about Google applications, even though Google applications are actually in scope, but it's about all the top applications. And outside I saw the Tinder booth. Tinder's in scope, for example, and they were actually the #1 partner that we had for Google Play Security Rewards program. So if anybody here is from Tinder, really appreciate that. So we soft launched it in 2017, October, and we announced it at Google I/O, I think, 2018. And the way it works is essentially this. The Google Play Security Rewards program is a bonus program for bug bounties on top applications. That means if someone finds a bug in Tinder, goes to Tinder, gets it fixed, gets their security reward, whatever it is, we pay an extra security reward for the same bug, essentially. They just tell us, hey, I just reported this to Tinder, they fixed it, please pay me a bonus. Then we go to Tinder and say, did this guy or did this person actually report this issue? Did you fix it? Yes, everything is good, we pay the bonus. That's how it works. And we started this program as an opt-in program, meaning we solicited partners among the top developers, and we grew the program to about 50 partners at the time. And we just recently announced a change. It is not opt-in anymore, but every application with more than 100 million installs is automatically in scope. That puts about 550 applications in scope. And so every security researcher essentially can now do a security review of the top 550 applications on Google Play, and we pay a bounty for if they find anything that is in our defined scope. The slide shows an extension of the slide I showed earlier, with blue being the security researcher, green being the organization, the app developer in this case, and yellow being us on the Google Play Security Research program. And I'm going to blow up the yellow parts so you can see it better. So what's essentially happening is that after the bug has been fixed by the application developer, the hacker submits an application for a bonus to the Google Play Security Rewards program, which is a publicly hosted program on HackerOne. If the claim is eligible, then we actually go out and confirm with the researcher, with the application, that this is a legit security bug, that they fixed it. And if the app developer confirms that, then we pay a bonus. And the bonus is actually fairly generous. And it started out as not so generous, I think, between $1,000 for low security issues and $5,000 for very high security issues. But we just bumped it up to $20,000 for high security and a minimum of $3,000 for low security. I hope this was announced externally already. I'm not totally sure, but I think it was. So the reward structure that we have with the Google Play Security Rewards program is actually much higher than nearly every single application on Google Play. So it's much better to file bugs with us after they got them fixed than with the original app developer. The way we incentivize, or the way we structure the process is you always have to go with the app developer first, because we're not actually interested in buying like exploits for other applications. We only want to know that someone looked into it and got it fixed. And so at this time, I think the Google Play Security Rewards program is one of the most lucrative security programs or bug bounty programs in the world. Maybe not in number of absolute payouts. There's always the ones that like Apple or Chrome OS or Android operating system or Facebook, which pay out a lot of money. But the combination of ease of finding stuff and high payouts, I think, makes this very lucrative. Because imagine we automatically put 550 applications in scope. Of those 550 applications, I would assume that at least 450 don't have a good security setup, and so it's very easy to find stuff in them. And there are people who make a lot of money in our bug bounty program, actually, by writing their own security scanner and then running that security scanner on all the apps and reporting the issues to us. I heard one of the guys who is our top bounty reporters or award recipients, he just bought a new Mustang and drove it across Russia. So seems to have a good life. The lessons we learned as part of this program is having a crystal clear policy is incredibly important, and I'm very grateful that we started the program in private mode first with a couple of top researchers, because they quickly told us, hey, this kind of stuff that you have in your terms of engagement doesn't make sense, this one can be changed, this one can be done better, and so on. And then we also quickly learned that there are certain categories of low severity security vulnerabilities that are so common that we should stop paying out money for them. And so that's the situation where we say, whenever someone new approaches us with a vulnerability in that class, we tell them, we don't actually pay out for this anymore. Here's the didn't you see that in the rules of engagement? But here's $500, but never report anything like that again. So we do change the terms of engagement, the scope, fairly often, because we want to direct security research in a certain way, and we want to understand what a security setup of applications on Google Play looks like across certain axes. Responsiveness is incredibly important, most important, I mentioned that before, so we try to close every ticket the week that we receive it, essentially. So if you're an application developer, even if you don't meet the 100 million downloads with your app, you can apply today by going out to HackerOne Partners Google Play and create your own vulnerability disclosure program for your app on HackerOne. You don't have to be on HackerOne. You can also, wherever you're hosted, being one of the competitors like Bugcrowd or self-hosted, then we can still work with you. It's a little bit more complicated if you're not on HackerOne, and it involves a lot of back and forth email instead of like easy ticket management on HackerOne, but we do it. There's a couple of others who are already in the program on Bugcrowd. So check that out. If you have any questions, you can also just email us at gpsrp@google.com, and we're happy to explain more about what it means to spin up a bug bounty program or a security rewards program for your application, or how to participate in our Google Play HackerOne bug bounty program. All right, I think we're set. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate you coming today.